Brian Solis is the Principal Analyst for Altimeter Group. I'm Butch Stearns here at CRM Evolution 2016. Hello, Brian.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. This is a great event. I just finished my keynote, kind of pumped up and energetic, great audience, great crowd, and excited to take on the world.
For people that don't know you or Altimeter Group, tell us what you do, what's your role there?
So I'm Principal Analyst at Altimeter Group. I study disruptive technology and its impact on business. I publish research on digital transformation, innovation, as well as customer experience, and help businesses understand how to change in these crazy times.
You wrote a book recently. Is it out already?
So I wrote a book called X, The Experience When Business Meets Design. It's about the aspect of how technology and society are evolving. I call it digital Darwinism. As businesses, we have a choice in how we want to compete. We can react, right? We can invest in new technology to try to keep up with people, or we could think about how they're changing at their core, their expectations, their preferences, their values, and to use those as ways to inspire new experiences, to design new experiences that affect everything from brand, products, services, models, everything. And so the book really is, it's a very experiential format of which teaches you how to create experiences.
How's it doing so far?
Book has blown my mind, all expectations. It quickly became a bestseller, which organically is a very difficult thing to do for any business book.
What have you learned from that experience?
So I learned from the book, this particular book, it's my 7th book, everything. And I say that very humbly, because when you write a book about experience design for the future, it's incredibly ironic to put it in a book format. So I was inspired to see if I couldn't apply what the book was teaching, to see if I could bring it to the book format itself. And when you study how digital customers are changing, how they interact with information, when you look at how they retain or what they find relevant or how they learn, you realize that there's an incredible opportunity to reinvent not only the book, but pretty much everything. So I used high school teenagers as my inspiration, knowing that they have to use textbooks today, to see if you could invent a textbook that would really engage them, help them learn their way, right? Applying the lessons that they need to learn, but delivered in ways that are going to be more intuitive and maybe even invisible. I learned, it took 3.5 years. It was debilitating. I wanted to quit 1,000 times, but I learned everything. I see the world differently now. I had to learn how to write sentences differently. I had to learn how to take sentences and apply visual learning, how many you have to put together in a row before you need a mental break, and all kinds of things, like even the fact that you don't need a table of contents anymore. You don't need a traditional chapter structure anymore in order to get these stories told. So long story short, I learned everything, and I also learned how you get a 100-year-old publisher to say, hey, we'll follow you along on this journey. Basically, everything that you teach in the book about experience design is what I had to go through to bring this book to market.
Well, congratulations on your success and continued success with that.
Thank you.
Let's talk to some organizations, to some businesses, maybe some recommendations, some advice, but just your thoughts mostly. What does it mean to simplify the front office?
When I hear the words front office, I can't help but think about traditional operations within an organization and sort of how it's skewed perspective of how it organizes itself to compete in marketplaces as part of the problem. So if I say front office, I think customer facing. If I think back office, I think the infrastructure to support that operationally. But what I don't hear in those types of conversations is, well, what does customer facing mean? And are we organized correctly to be not only engaging and relevant, but also are we meeting the needs and expectations of customers and how they're evolving? And does our front office work in that capacity? And the answer is, in all of my digital transformation research, the answer is no. That companies are woefully outdated and woefully ill-prepared to compete for I would say the coming economy, but it's already here, which is why we see so much business disruption happening today, why we see startups taking out complete industries, is because the front office does not actually understand what it means to engage the new customer.
What are successful businesses doing with their business process systems to have optimal customer experiences?
Successful businesses are looking at the front office, they're looking at back office investments in technology, in infrastructure, in models, in processes, in services. They're looking across everything because technology isn't the solution. It is an enabler, but to be an enabler, it needs purpose. And I think customer experience is one of the biggest catalysts for digital transformation because good customer experience, successful, innovative organizations are looking at the whole thing. They're saying, all right, if we're living in an era of digital Darwinism where technology and society are evolving, what's our play, right? And what are the real expectations and preferences? And this is why I think that real successful organizations are looking from the outside in rather than the inside out, which is what they tend to do, or companies tend to do. And they'll say things like, what does customer experience mean? And you'll get, with some organizations, customer experience is the investment in technology and infrastructure to compete for today's customer journey, modernizing and optimizing it operationally. If you ask the customer what customer experience means, they're going to tell you something like, oh, well, it's how I feel and how I react to your touch points throughout my life cycle, my relationship with your company. So I don't care if you have a front office or a back office, I don't even know what that means. I want a seamless journey. I want to be engaged my way in every moment of truth. I want to interact with touch points the way that I interact with the world, and you shouldn't force me to conform to your processes just because you're trying to figure it out. And this is why the gap between what customers want and what you're doing is the gap for disruption. So that's where you're vulnerable.
You want to give them the opportunity to buy at any point during the journey, correct?
Oh, you want customers not only to buy at any point in the journey, you want them to be able to find you their way on their device in a way that's intuitive and native. And that's really difficult because a lot of executives making decisions about technology don't live the brand the way that their customers do. They don't use the technology the way that their customers do. And they're thinking about stakeholders and shareholders and processes and culture and politics and egos and all kinds of things that the customer doesn't even care about. And so in order to really cater to that customer, you got to live the lifestyle. You have to understand how technology is part of their life and let it inspire you to do cool things.
Talk to us about business agility. How important is it, and how does it affect which systems you use as an organization?
Agile is a word that is used quite a bit in business to the point where I think it's actually lost its meaning. Much like the word experience too is I think losing its meaning because we put it into our organizational infrastructure and we force those words to conform based on how we're going to work around them. Agility is important, so is culture, and I think culture of any organization is going to define the success of which technology and processes and everything allow for a company to be agile. So I think really what we're looking at is we're going into an era where we need more leadership and less management, and that means that people have to start by asking, what's my role in this change? Am I in the right role? Are we doing the right things that's going to help us be competitive 24 months, 18 months from now? Because technology is not going to stop, it's only going to continue to accelerate. So do we have the right infrastructure to test and learn? Do we have a culture that rewards testing and learning? Do we have a culture that allows for cross-functional collaboration where we actually build new models? And the answer to most of those cases is like we're sort of working through that. And that's why I study digital transformation, because it is a purpose-driven track, agile aside, of which you bring about meaningful change.
What are the benefits of a single open platform solution?
Well, it's a single open platform solution I look at as being a meaningful opportunity for companies to expedite how they test and learn, to basically expedite how they're able to build a better experience because the infrastructure is there to do so. The hardest part, though, is getting companies to relinquish the previous investments because they made those investments. The reality is this: the customer defines your fate. Your legacy investments in not only technology, but also the processes that support them, determine where you compete against that fate. They determine your legacy. So technology is your solution. It's your enabler to do something bigger and better. It's your choice. You want to take it slowly or you want to take it quickly, because the customer's moving at their own pace and it's pretty quick.
Let's talk to CIOs for a minute. What are some of the things they should consider before buying more solutions for their front office?
I have a soft spot in my heart for CIOs because I think that they've had to build an infrastructure within an organization where technology is just completely blown up in the last 10, 20 years. And those original infrastructures of which built the original CIO role was meant to sort of manage that technology, that implementation, the training around that, the road mapping around technology planning ahead. And now technology is moving so quickly that the role of CIO is not what it used to be. You still need an infrastructure for IT to support existing and future investments, but you also need that I to stand for innovation. This is why you see CMOs starting to rival their CIO counterparts in technology investments, because they're trying to keep up with the front office stuff, with how do we build out the customer experience? How do we build out marketing clouds and experience clouds? How do we build out all of these things? But at the end of the day, you can't make those investments without a CIO partner. And CIOs have to recognize that there are going to be other investments throughout the organization because people are changing. Customers are changing, employees are changing. We need a technology leader within the organization who can split from management to also to leadership to explore new opportunities. And I see that CIO role happening in a lot of cases in innovation centers, where they are testing and learning with new technologies and bringing that back into the organization.
Let's talk to CIOs for a minute. What are some of the things they should consider before buying more solutions for their front office?
Communities are the customer experience, and this is one of the things that I wish more businesses understand. When people make decisions, they are not going to websites. Your company website is written for your lawyers and the people who approve the copy that's on there in the design. They are looking for insights to make decisions, and often in a connected society, those insights are coming from the shared experiences of other people, and communities are the platform. They're the epicenter for those shared experiences, and that's why they're incredibly not only important, but they're blowing up, defining how customer decision making is taking place. So you have to learn from them, you have to be part of them, you have to host them, and that's a hard thing for companies that tend to like to control the message.
What specific business problems do good communities help solve?
I think that thriving communities tend to solve a lot of problems that exist and also create opportunities that we might not realize. And so if you think about how someone searches for information or how someone wants to contribute information today, they go to find places like this to be able to participate. So there's the buy side, the own side of the customer lifecycle. Any community serves its purpose to help you make a decision and then support you after those decisions. And I think that's, at the end of the day, community is something that I think a lot of companies tend to look at as maybe a necessary evil, but they're incredibly human and they're incredibly productive. Something about a good community that's human and customer-centered makes belonging to that community matter, not because I'm a member of the community, but what the collective membership of that community accomplishes together. And to know that it's there for every moment of truth throughout my life cycle helps me actually stay closer to any company or any brand in the future.
I'm an organization planning my community strategy. What are best practices I should go by?
If I were hired to help you with your community strategy, I would first have to take a shot of tequila, because that's a very interesting conversation to have. But there are best practices, and then I think there are innovative practices. One of the things that I've learned in studying digital transformation, I came up with a framework called the opposite framework. And it stands for 8 success factors that I saw not happening in any one organization, but happening across successful organizations, and if they all applied to one company, we would see some really great innovation. And I would highly recommend that you download it. It's free, so just Google opposite and my name and digital transformation. But what it starts with is it forces you out of your community process, your traditional community process, to look at how people are using communities outside of your sector. So don't even look at your competition. Look at the most successful communities in the most random, I don't care if you're B2B or B2C, you find really interesting ways to inspire what aspects of what makes the pillars of a successful community from a human first perspective. This is why I think the most successful place to start is with the perspective of human-centered design, which is different than how a lot of technology design processes work when you're building out communities. And then it informs how technology plays a role in facilitating those pillars of community engagement.
When it comes to community strategy for B2B versus B2C companies, are they different?
There's certainly a tendency for companies, whether you're in B2C or B2B, to think that you have to follow your given path. So if I'm a B2B company, I need B2B examples. But what ends up happening is that it's like if I tell you, think outside of the box, I just put you in another box. I haven't changed the game. I haven't changed the rules. I haven't changed the norms. I think looking outside of your sector is important, because at the end of the day, we're talking about what I used to call P2P, people to people. This is just really what it is. It's human beings on the other side of that screen.
When it comes to communities, what are some of the trends we're seeing?
When it comes to trends in terms of communities, I think that one of the biggest trends that companies have to pay attention to is, I became a digital anthropologist by default. It's something that I had to learn, because technology makes more sense when you understand the intentions, the context, the other parameters like time and aspiration and outcome from people. They're changing. It's incredible how much technology has impacted society. And if you think about that and you allow it to permeate your work, you become by default, the way I became a digital anthropologist, you become by default empathetic. And empathetic is at the core of human-centered design. So I would encourage anybody to look at behaviors, expectations, aspirations, outcomes, all of those things in order to drive your community program.
Brian, thanks for your time. Continued success with your book.
Thank you.
All right, good to see you.